and gentlemen. My name is Rajjat Kharbanda. I am the research director and the client partner at 6W Research. So today I am here to give you a presentation on Africa's stationery market and its key findings. So I will be sharing the insights on what exactly the Africa stationery market is and how the future gonna be in the coming years. So before I start, let me give you a brief introduction about my company, 6W Research. So 6W Research is a strategic research and advisory firm. So we specializes in assisting client in various entry and penetration strategies, go-to-market strategies, feasibility studies, consumer buying behavior, channel assessment, competitive landscape, etc. So we are operating in market research services since 2011 and have a very good forte in verticals like electronics, IT, telecom, energy power, semiconductor, automotive, healthcare, education, etc. Right. So also we have a very good presence and we are offering services across 60 countries globally, and Middle East and Africa region is one of our key forte. Right. So now coming back to the presentation. Okay. So how big is Africa's stationery market? So as you can see from the graph that in 2020 the market was around 4 billion US dollar and is expected to reach around 5 billion US dollar by the year 2027, growing at a CAGR of 3.3%. Now over here the market revenues include for the countries like Egypt, Ethiopia, South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Morocco and WECA region. Okay, and as you can see from the graph as well, there was a dip in 2020. The stationery market declined due to this pandemic, and we know that there were lockdowns and schools were not operating. So that's the reason why the market declined in 2020. But yes, 2021 was a good year and the market grew. And the same trend is expected to follow in the coming years as well. And you can see the growth rate over there. Amongst all the listed countries, South Africa and Nigeria are the leading one, which have captured around 50% of the market revenues. I'm just talking about all these mentioned countries. So amongst them, these two countries have captured around 50% of the market revenues. So why South Africa is leading amongst all the countries? So there are multiple reasons behind it. Right, South Africa government, or you can say GDP spending on education sector is around 7%. That's a huge number, right? So government of South Africa is working a lot for the education sector, and also Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Innovation in South Africa is investing around US dollar 770 million, more than 770 million rather, for developing the university infrastructure across 26 public universities. So such kind of initiatives are actually driving the growth of education sector, and consequently it is driving the market for stationery products. As you can see from the below mentioned chart, South Africa's school infrastructure spending for different years it is mentioned. We can see that year on year the market or you can say the expenditure was increasing, right? Except the 2020, of course, COVID was an obvious reason. So 2016-17, it was 807.9 million US dollar, and it is expected to reach around 1 billion by 2022-23. Okay, one other factor which is driving the South Africa market is the growing commercial sector, right? We know that the startup culture is increasing, and cities like Johannesburg, Cape Town are the key cities which is driving the commercial office spaces in South Africa. So below you can see the total office stock in cities like Johannesburg, Cape Town, etc. have increased in different years, and because of this, the commercial space is increasing. And ultimately, it will drive the culture of startup and other organization as well. So ultimately, driving the growth of stationery business. Okay, Kenya. Kenya is one of the interesting country where government is playing a very vital role to uplift the education infrastructure and ecosystem. And if we talk about Kenya, the national budget in the year 2021 increased to 6%. I mean, it was 20% in 2020, and in 2021 it was around 26%. So such a huge number in spending towards education is actually driving the education ecosystem, and of course, demand of stationery would be there. So below it is mentioned that Kenya expenditure on free primary education. So for different years it is mentioned, and also Kenya new classroom constructed in primary schools for different years. 1920 it increased to 155. So schools are increasing. Definitely the demand for stationery would be there. Okay, now coming back to the application market. So, education application, office application are the major application which are driving the demand for stationery, right? Be it Africa or any other country, any other region. So, application in terms of application. Education application is the leading one, which has captured or which is expected to capture around 60% of the market revenues for the entire stationery business in 2021. If I see the number, 2.5 billion US dollar was is expected to be generated in 2021 from the education sector itself, which is expected to be around 3.1 billion US dollar by the year 2027. So such numbers, will definitely create a demand for different stationery products in the market. Okay, so now talking about paper versus non-paper stationery segment. Um, in 2020, the paper stationery segment has led the market. It has generated more market revenues for the Africa stationery. But an interesting trend is expected in the year 2027, where the non-paper stationery segment would be at par with the paper segment, right? So non-paper stationery segment is actually increasing and would be at par by 2027 with the with the paper segment. Okay, so why Africa, stationery market is increasing? So there are multiple factors which are driving the growth of the market. One of the main and key factor which is driving the growth is the growing literacy rate. So several international organizations such as UNICEF, UNESCO, and in fact the government organizations and government of different countries are spending a lot for developing and uplifting the education sector for Africa region, right? So if I talk about, there are multiple international organizations such as GPE, UNESCO, UNICEF. They are contributing a lot. For instance, in 2020 alone, GPE approved around 300 million grants to uplift the education ecosystem, for different African countries, which includes your Mozambique, then Ethiopia and Central African Republic. So such grants will definitely drive the growth of stationery business in Africa region. So below graph shows that sub-Sahara Africa literacy rate of adults above the age 15. So it was around 65.8% in 2020, and same for tertiary education enrollment, it was around 9.5%. Another key factor which is actually driving the growth is the growing commercial spaces across different Africa region, right? Or you can say different African countries. Now, a very interesting phenomena is happening in Africa, right? Wherein startup culture is actually growing, right? And in specifically, if I talk about cities like Nairobi, Cape Town, Johannesburg, Accra, so there are Lagos. So there are multiple, cities where the startup culture is increasing. So, and in fact, these startups are getting venture capitalist funding, which is actually driving the commercial business in Africa region. So, number of startups in Africa securing venture capital funding, an interesting phenomena which has happened. In 2016, it was just 77 number of companies have secured venture capital funding, but it increased dramatically to 359 in 2020. So this shows a potential in Africa region. Now, if I talk about Africa new office space requirement in square feet, so we have compared Q2 and Q3 of 2021. It shows that 199,000 square feet, space was there in Q2 2021, and Q3 it touched to 297,000. That's a huge number. Will definitely drive the growth of stationery business. Okay. So, oh, okay. So, what are the challenges the market is facing if I talk about Africa stationery? So, what are the restraint, or you can say the market is facing? So, one of the major restraint which I personally feel is that uh, I'm sure which most of the people won't like it. It's actually digitalization, right? So, digitalization is one of the key factor which can hinder the growth of stationery business in Africa region. We know that due to this pandemic, everything has gone virtual, right? There's a massive adoption of education from home, right? And there is an interesting concept which is growing, that is smart learning, e-learning, right? And obviously, due to these factors, the market will definitely hinder, right? So these are some of the factors which can impact the growth of the market in the coming years. But what I personally feel is that this could be a short-term to medium-term factor. But over the longer run, um maybe there could be a scenario where the hybrid model can work. But yes, of course, it is a factor which can hinder the growth of the market in short-term and medium-term. Okay, so these are certain facts which are there for the Africa market. So it's nothing but Africa key countries government expenditure on education as a percentage of GDP. So I mentioned for different countries, and same thing applies to Africa key countries enrollment in primary education. So all these kind of numbers are there. Okay, and same thing for secondary education and tertiary education. Um, that's it from my side. If you have any question, you can definitely ask from me on the same.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Nothing? All right, we do have one. Let me get you the mic, please, so everyone can hear your question. There you go. Thank you. There you go.
First of all, thank you for your nice presentation.
Thank you.
I have a question. You have been talking about education application. I just would like you to clarify more what you mean by education application. Do you mean smart application?
Okay, so application over here means the end user. Okay, so where the consumption of stationery is happening, right? Education includes your colleges, schools, right? So this is the basically end user, or other word you want to say is end user instead of application, right? So end user is the education application, and similarly office, right? That's the other application, or you can say the end user, which is consuming the stationery products. So over that, it means that education is the leading, and it contributes around 60% of the market revenues for the stationery business in Africa. And same trend is there for other regions, or maybe if I talk about it for global market, education is the leading one, the major consumption driver of stationery.
I think we're done. Thank you so much, Rajjat,
Thank you.
for your insightful presentation.